on a Facebook post, it's probably one of the most intense racing you'll do. And it's mostly because of the weather conditions and the time factor you have. I mean, you only get to run really one time a year. Most racing you do every weekend. But this is, one event. And if you don't bring your A game, you go home with nothing and prep for the next year. So it is a bit more challenging than a lot of racing from that standpoint. Of course, the speeds we're running in our latest record, and I haven't really announced this yet anywhere, but we actually were very fortunate. We had 4 runs, and like I told you, it takes 2 runs to set a record. So you can't set a record without 2 runs on 2 different days. And we had 4 runs and set 2 records. So we were very fortunate. We did as good as you could possibly do. Our very first run, we exceeded the existing record, went to impound, prepped the car for the next morning, came back, had another good run. Our average for the 2 days was above the old record, so we got a brand new record. We took the afternoon off, came back on Sunday and ran again. We exceeded the record we had just set on Saturday, so that qualified us to run again for a record. And we ran again for a record then. They allowed us to run late Sunday afternoon, and there was a lot of debate amongst the racers whether they would want to race Saturday at late Sunday afternoon when it was hot or first thing Monday morning when it was really cool. And we knew from the weather forecast Monday morning would potentially have some high winds. And our car does seem to do well in the heat of the day. So we elected to run yet Sunday afternoon, and we were very fortunate to, again, set another land speed record. So we set 2 records in our first 4 runs. And the weather on Monday morning was not conducive to racing. I don't know how many guys made it into impound. I know when we went by, there was nobody there, basically. So it was a real strong 10-plus mile an hour headwind on Monday morning. So our decision to run on Sunday afternoon, I think, worked out well for us.
Yeah. So guys, the video is working now, and if all you watching have any questions about this process, the speed run, the car, any of that kind of stuff, we can get those to Tom for you. And I think we're all on board.
And like I said, you'll see these black markers coming up are 1/4 mile marks, and then when you see the large orange signs, they're marking either the 1 mile, the 2 mile, or the timing 2 1/4. So I don't have my glasses on. I can't see what that one was, but that was probably the 3. But
so tell me,
Tom,
did we get to how fast you went, Tom? We've been talking about it, but we didn't give a number.
Yeah. So our first record was 126.2 and change. That was based off a 2-day average. And then we came back. That was Friday morning. We had a good run, qualified for impound at 127.5. 0.3, something like that, and then qualified for impound. And then we backed that up Saturday morning with a slower run, but the 2-way average was still enough to beat our old record. And we're actually beating our record every time we do this. We really don't have, at the moment, people in the class competing against us. We pretty well eliminated that. So much so that they moved us into another class, which was really disheartening, but whatever. I said, I don't care what you do. We'll race wherever you put us. So they moved us into a modified class. We got to run in that now, and we still got the records, whatever. But then the second day or the third day we ran our third run. We ran 127 plus, so we qualified once again because we exceeded our old record of 126.2. And then we came back and ran that afternoon with another good run. And that 2-way average was like 126.615 is the new standing, is our new record. And then we do have a record too of 127 plus in the I class, which is a 1,000 cc engine. We did it with basically our 750 cc engine and just slightly larger pistons to qualify because you can't run a smaller engine in a larger class. So we had to make it just a tiny bit bigger.
Gotcha. So for those watching, Tom, I know there's probably going to be a lot of viewers that don't know much or anything at all about setting a world speed record like you performed. So what kind of challenges did you run into? I know you talked a little bit about weather, but are there other things to consider when you're trying to prepare for taking on this monumental feat?
Well, you got to get a crew together, and was never a problem for me when I owned a transmission business with 30 plus employees. But we've got a group of employees that have bought that business. So I don't have the resource pool that I used to have. So I look to volunteers like Mark and Lee maybe to want to maybe do something unusual. So you end up with so the biggest challenge I think for us right now is just getting a new crew. There's Patty and Dan, Dan helps at the museum, and he's a pilot and pretty knowledgeable guy, and just getting a crew together where we can actually be competitive, and then what can we get done on the car in the off season to make it competitive. We've dedicated so much time to the museum, and then I am still coaching football too, so it's finding time to test and tune, so to say, and research and develop on the engine and try to make it go faster. That's really challenging. Just how do you get a car that had a top speed of roughly 100 mile per hour at sea level on asphalt to go 126, 127 at 4,000 foot elevation with a density of air that is always in the 6,000 to 7,000 foot range. So you're running in really thin air, and you don't have a turbo like all of our other SAABs have. So we can't cram more in there. We're doing it naturally aspirated. So that's a bit of a problem.
So
and the salt will actually slow you down. There's about a 15 to 20% correction of what that car would do on asphalt sea level compared to what it does at Bonneville. So that car would probably do in the 145 to 150 range if we could put it on asphalt and have it at sea level.
We've got a bunch of questions here. Let me run through these. Let's see. Kay asked, "What about your tires? Are they special in any way?"
You actually run drag strip front tires, so they're extremely smooth. We run a little bit over stock pressure. We'll make much more comment than that. Someone can talk to me off, and I'll tell you kind of what we do. So that you want a tire that really doesn't grab any traction. So it's different than an asphalt tire where you want traction. Here we're trying to make the car as friction free, both in airflow and its a footprint on the salt as possible, because the salt will suck you in. It'll act a lot like driving on kind of a semi-frozen road, or not quite like slush, although it was like slush when we did our record run. That's the first time I've ever, the first record run we did, run number 2, first time I've ever had to tow the car to the starting line, raining. And I thought for sure they would cancel the event and move it a day. But they said, no, you guys are going to run. It's like, okay. Patty's like, I can't see out the windshield, because you can't drive the car from point A to point B. You have to tow it. So you have to tow it from the impound to the starting line. And she's like, there's so much rain, I can't really see where I'm going.
Robert Thorison here is asking, any kind of special gearing or gearbox that you're using?
Not particularly. I mean, it's just one thing I've really tried to do with this car from day one is keep it as stock as possible. We've modified a few things. We've got Mikuni carbs on it now rather than the side draft Solex. We set a lot of records with 100% stock setup. So the transmission is just a 4.88 ratio, which would fit actually fit that car, a Sonett 2-stroke or a Sonett V4 or a Monte Carlo V4. And, we've done a little bit inside the tranny, Teflon coated all the gears, stuff like that. But for the most part, it's just a close ratio V4 gear set that you could put in any of your driving cars, actually.
Did you change the fuel oil mixture ratio at all? Since it's a 2-cycle engine, you have to do a fuel oil mix.
Yeah, right? Not really. There's a bit of debate on what ratio should work best, and we run 32-1. That seems to be a very proven ratio amongst racers. I did some research prior to this event. There's actually quite a bit of data out there that would support a heavier mixture, something down in the 24 to 18-1, and giving better sealing on the rings. You just have to jet up because you've got a higher portion, you've got a higher number of molecules of oil now than you do than fuel at 32-1. So you got to introduce more fuel to it. Most people will tell you want to run leaner, but those are usually people, I'm going to say, that maybe haven't raced with older vintage stuff. The newer stuff, you can do that. The old stuff, it's a little bit more difficult. So.
Hey, and another question from the crowd here: was the engine temperature an issue out there in that kind of heat? So it was 87 degrees when you were running?
Yeah, and we ran as high as 100. So no, the 2-stroke engine likes to run cool. We don't warm it up at all. I mean, I'll actually take these engines on when I rebuild them. I'll take them from my bench, put them in the car, put them on the dyno, and I'll thrash them right out of the gate. And we do the same thing at Bonneville. It goes from, whatever ambient temperature is up to about 160 is about as high as we get. We don't have a fan on it, and we run a electric-driven water pump, so we're not over-revving the water pump and causing cavitation. Mm-hmm. But a two-stroke loves to run around 140 to 160 degrees, and fortunately, that's about where we're able to keep this engine pretty much all the time. There I'm showing, if they can see the picture, that's 10 fingers up, and that's 10 years of racing at Bonneville now. And if my math is right, we've set 17 land speed records in vintage Saabs. So,
wow!
Because we've also ran a Saab 96 that was donated to us by the late Bertil Solenskog, by his widow, Pat.
And Kay is asking, what about your exhaust? Tuned any way to adjust back pressure?
Yeah, tuned a lot. So that's really where we've been able to, for lack of better words, make money on the cars is with carburation and exhaust. A two-stroke is a really different animal, and you're actually tuning from the end of the carburetor all the way to the end of the exhaust pipe. So there's formulas you use on the intake side to show, and then there's a formula on the exhaust side, and you try to blend those together to get the optimum RPM. And right now we're tuning for about 8,000 RPMs. And with our latest changes we made, I moved our chassis dyno to Sturgis in over the winter. It had been in Iowa all these years. It's really hard for me to tune with it in Iowa and if I live in Sturgis. So we brought it here over the winter, and we were able to make some changes, which was able to help us set this record. And we were able to finally get our RPMs up over 8,000. We're running, the last run we did a fifth run just as experimental with the exhaust. We were actually pulling 8,700 RPMs, which is pretty amazing for a motor that was designed to run around 5,500, 6,000.
Well, next time,
wow.
When the video recycles here, I'm going to bring the sound up so people can hear what that angry two-cycle sounds like. It's really
there you go.
Yeah. There it is.
Probably sounds like an angry herd of bees. Goodness.
Here it is. That's one wicked leaf blower you got going there, buddy.
Yeah, it's
wow.
Yeah, it'll take the grass out by the roots if you're not careful. Yeah, we're doing now. I think we're doing roughly 110 to 113 by the 1 mile. By the 2 mile, 2 1/4. We've got to be kind of in that window of where we want to run 125 to 128, and then by the end of the 3 mile, we're up around 129, 130. And we're able to run the car. I think I took it to 108 mile an hour in third gear, which, again, the car from the factory was 100 mile an hour in fourth gear, asphalt, sea level. So we're pretty happy about that.
Wow. How about that?
Wow.
And it gets pretty rough. This track was actually very good. I've got some videos that we have to kind of stabilize them to get them to come out halfway decent because they're so darn rough, and the cameras are just, and I'm in there going, bouncing all over. So,
and what's it feel like steering this car at that speed?
If we have I don't know if you've got an inside video or not, but I mean, you just hold the wheel and drive. I mean, it goes down the road straight as an arrow. The car doesn't seem to be affected any by wind turbulence, wind speed. The only problem we had one year, we had bad shocks on the back and a really rough track. and that car was every which way. And I had a different guy driving it, a guy that actually does a lot of racing, and he was like, "Not anyone can drive this car," and it's there's no torque in a two-stroke. So you heard us at the starting line there. We have to keep that engine up somewhere in the 5,000 to 6,000 RPM range at idle to keep it from flooding and causing issues, because you've got it so high strung and set. There's a very narrow band of power you can run this car at and get it to go down the road. So you've got to keep through higher RPMs and shifting gears, keep it in that power band, or you end up stalling out.
For entertainment purposes, this car doesn't, it's such a cool looking shot that we're looking at right now. This car doesn't have like a weird or quirky name, does it, Tom? Or is it any kind of nickname you guys have given this thing?
No, I wish we did. It's the SAAB story on the Salt. People laugh at that, but we just call it 6797. Because it was it started out as a 1967 Model 97. So, like I said, we had to change that to a 68 because of class. They made it. I mean, as soon as you think you know what the rules are, they change. That's kind of the nature of a lot of racing. So
hey, in this,
I mean, like the Sonett 1. I mean, they made 6 of those, and then 30 days later, the rules changed and the car was obsolete. So that's the nature of racing.
Somebody here is asking about the hubcap details. So obviously those are pretty aero slick hubcaps, custom.
Yeah, so we're running a Sonett soccer ball rim under that, and like I said, all 4 tires are either Hoosier, Mickey Thompson, or Moroso drag strip tires that basically have 0 tread on them, front tires, and then those are just Moonies. The guys at the race, you get talking to the racers, and everyone claims that adds about a mile per hour. It would be really tough to document that because you couldn't possibly run 2 runs, within a mile per hour because of the variation. I mean, I've seen the wind. The wind is really unusual on the Salt and how it works. So if the wind gets much over 10 mile per hour, especially a side wind, they'll shut racing down for safety reasons. But I've seen they'll have as many as 4 courses running at once. And I've seen all the courses running but one because it was too windy there. And it's like, well, they're only, of course, distance is huge there. The courses can be 4 or 5 miles apart. The first year we went to the Salt, I set my trip meter at 0 when we left the asphalt and entered the Salt. And after a week of racing, we'd gone 187 miles just driving the car from the pit to the starting line and going to pick it up at the end of the race and taking it back to the pits.
Oh, wow.
So distances are very, very huge at Bonneville. The pits can stretch, just the pit area can stretch for 4 or 5 miles.
Oh, wow.
So those googly eyes that Mark mentioned a moment ago, is that an aero mod that's allowed, or is that just kind of for fun and being a smart aleck?
Yeah, that was us at a casino we were staying at, because for a room, and they had this huge eyeball hanging on a string for Halloween. And I was like, I'm going to buy that, cut it in half and glue it to the headlights. I thought it would be illegal, but they let me run it. So it's like, all right, everybody loves it.
That's fun.
So yeah, does it add anything? I doubt it, but it made it look different. So it gives it a real bug eye. You get a lot of people taking pictures and laughing at it. I mean, at Bonneville, we set these records they're not real high by Bonneville standards, because the records can be, 200, 300, 400 mile an hour. But Bonneville racers, if you talk to a Bonneville racer, they don't really care what your record is. The fact you have a record is what they care about, and they know how much work it takes to get there and to set a record in any class. But yet, if I talk to someone on the street, let's say someone walks in the museum and, oh, you run at Bonneville, what kind of speed you run? You go 127. They go, oh, it's a joke. I do that in my car. I did that on the freeway coming over here, and it's like, well, okay, whatever. You got a 2.3 turbo and you're running on asphalt, but whatever, it's unless you've been involved in some kind of a racing, anyone that races anything, it's, like this podcast. I mean, it just doesn't happen because you just flip your computer open 2 minutes before and go, oh, I'm going to do a podcast. Anything that is that is worth doing is worth doing good, I think. And to be good at anything takes effort and takes time. So, and that was our guy that came with us this year. And everyone that's came with us, they're just like, we're amazed at the level of prep and the things that we do to document the speeds and the specifications of everything we set. It, good stuff doesn't happen by accident, and like I said, it doesn't matter what it is, a business, a podcast, a football team, a race team, doesn't matter, a classroom, doesn't matter. It's the product of hard work.
Hey, so what is this thing we're looking at?
That's been dubbed the Monster SAAB, and that is owned by a guy named Rex Savoda. And if we're really, really fortunate, someday Rex may give that to the museum. That's a huge SAAB. It's a SAAB, about a 64 SAAB, 96 in the back. It's nothing like a SAAB in the front. It's more like a long torpedo. It runs over 300 mile per hour. You see that huge wing on the front now,
wow.
Huge spoiler. He's had so much trouble with the car walking around. He'll spin out at over 300 mile an hour because it's still front wheel drive. So traction on the big cars is a problem. We don't really have that at 750cc. So we don't quite need that.
Yeah.
And then this one here, this is Dan Howe. He's out of Lawrence, Kansas, and he runs a classic 900 8 valve. He's got that thing up to, I think maybe 171 mile an hour. It's just amazing what he's done with that car.
What?
Yeah, it's amazing what he's done with that car. And he was there basically using this best in tune, had a new engine, new transmission, and was trying to get kind of things squared out. And usually it takes a couple of years to get things figured out to get it going good. And that's the famous exit off I-80, going into Bonneville. So it's a special spot. I think Lee had mentioned you watched the movie The World's Fastest Indian.
Yeah.
And that's a great story of Burt Munro out of New Zealand and his lifelong dream, bucket list, like we call it today, to race at Bonneville Salt Flats. And a great personal interest story. It's a good movie for anybody, whether you like racing, like cars. It's just a great movie. But you get you get a little bit of a concept of what it takes to get there. And he had extra challenges coming from New Zealand.
All
Good
right.
stuff.
Well, buddy,
Patty said I had horns on that picture, so I don't know what that meant. maybe it was how I was acting in the pits, because I give a volunteer army, but we're there to set records. We're not there to watch. We're not there to be a spectator. We're certainly not there to, quote, have fun and just have a jolly time. We're there, like I would do with a football team or a business or the museum. We're there to achieve a mission, achieve a goal. And so I do push everyone on the team to do the best we can all do to achieve that end result.
Well, I
don't know if that's good or bad, but that's how I am. I can't do stuff and just, quote, have fun at it. It's we're going to do it. We're going to try to do it right.
Well, I think we all benefit from that in the way you run the museum. I'm eager to get out there and see it, and hopefully I'll do that next year at SOC when we all head to Sturgis, South Dakota, to go see Tom and Patty and everybody who makes the museum a success at the SOC next year.
Should be an awesome time. And of course, this car will be here. We're trying to get some other land speed record cars in. So hopefully we'll have a nice display set up for everybody.
All right. Mark,
Awesome.
Anything on your mind before we run?
Oh, I've been just enjoying the show, to be quite honest. I unfortunately wish I would have been more of a participant, but I've been kind of a viewer here. I've just been in awe of the whole event and basically hearing the story, man. It must have been so much fun. So we can only imagine as far as being there ourselves. But I got to say that it's really awesome hearing this story, and man, it's your inspiration to all of us, Tom. You really are.
Say that again.
I appreciate it. And you mentioned fun, and it's fun when it's done. It's pretty intense when you're there. After you set a record, you get a little bit of a lull, but these are long days and a lot of work to get to get where you want to go. And I just want to thank both you guys for doing this podcast and inviting me back, for SAAB Talk Live, and appreciate what you do, Lee and Mark, and keep the SAAB brand out there.
Well, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And you know what? My favorite quote of the night there, it's fun when it's done. I think that applies to a lot of things in life. Good job on that one.
That does. Yep. And there's the rainbow. We knew we had good luck when that rainbow showed up. And then we had, of all things, we had green dragonflies. I've never seen a dragonfly out there at all, and there were green dragonflies, and they were like attracted to our car. It was like, oh my God, it's our mom, this is mother unit, whatever. It's the mothership. It's like, oh, that's got to be a good sign.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap things up here. Tom, thanks again. So impressed with everything that you do for SAAB and the community. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hey,
Thanks,
Mark,
Tom.
we'll see you next week, my friend.
Absolutely. Everyone have a great week, and hopefully everyone have a good SAAB week. Lots of fun things ahead.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.